Are we ready? All right, I will now call to order the February 15th, 2024 meeting of the Salem Historic Landmarks Commission. First up, we've got the swearing in of new commissioners.
Okay, so I, Charles Weathers, do solemnly swear or affirm that I will support the Constitution and laws of the United States of America and the state of Oregon and the city charter and ordinances of the city of Salem, and that I will, to the best of my ability, faithfully and lawfully perform the duties of historic landmarks commissioner for Salem during the continuous Congratulations, you're officially the bishop.
Excellent, thank you. Next up is going to be roll call. Will the reporter please take roll call?
Commissioner Burton?
Here.
Commissioner Henry? Here. Commissioner Pearson? Here. Commissioner Blankenship?
Present.
Commissioner Morris? Here. Commissioner Strauss?
Here.
Commissioner Withers?
Here.
And Commissioner Zimmerman is absent, but plans on attending soon, and Commissioner Strong is absent excused. We have one.
Perfect, thank you. All right, the commission will now hear testimony from the public concerning items not on the agenda. I don't see anybody here, so I don't think that we need to talk about that. Great. Seeing none, we'll now consider approval of the minutes from our January 18th, 2024 meeting.
I move approval of the minutes for January 18th. I'll second.
All right, perfect. Motion to approve from Commissioner Inman and a second from Commissioner Timbrook. Is there any corrections or discussion? Great. Okay, then all in favor of approval, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, perfect. The minutes are approved. All right, so heading on down the agenda, we don't have any public hearings on the agenda, so we'll move to item 6, which is our action item, the 2023 annual report and the 2024 work plan. Do we have a presentation from staff on this, or? Yes, perfect. Well, sorry. Okay, perfect. We should have, I'm not sure exactly if we'll.
They should have received it in their packet.
And for the record, Commissioner Zimmerman is present. Thank you.
All right, Kimberly Fitzgerald, Historic Preservation Officer for the City of Salem. So this is coming back to you after last month, and you should have the full copy of the plan with all of the updated information. And I think before we go into the work plan assignments, I'm going to turn it back over to the chair to see if any commissioners have recommended edits or suggestions for staff.
I noticed that it says 2025 at the end about the residential grants. That should probably say 2025.
2023
Yeah,
is the type, yeah, good catch.
unless you're projecting like a biannual.
Yeah, right.
thing. Anyway, just proving read it.
Okay, great. I want to say thank you for all the photos in here. They look great. It's really nice to see some representation of all of our projects that we've worked on over the years. So thank you guys so much for putting together a great report. Do we need to formally approve this? Okay, perfect. If there are any corrections, then I suppose I will consider, do we need to move to approve probably the correction for this 2024? Okay, great.
And I think you can combine it all, you could just move at your discretion to direct staff to make any recommended edits and then present it to city council as an information item at the next available.
Okay, perfect.
I will move to approve with the correction on page 8 under the residential toolbox grant program to change it from 2025 to 2023. To approve it in its entirety and to move it towards city council for approval.
Second.
Perfect. We've got a motion from Commissioner Timbrook and second from Commissioner Kaiser. To your motion.
I just appreciate all the work that staff has put into this and also Andy being our outgoing chair. And so thank you.
Perfect. Any other discussion? Okay, great. Then I suppose I'll go ahead and take a vote. All in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, looks like motion passes. Thank you. Alrighty, perfect. So that moves us on to our discussion items. The first one is going to be the security gates and fences update.
Hello, I'm Jacob Morris, the Preservation Planner, Steve Salem. I would like to present to you today some updated materials as part of our ongoing efforts to provide some clear review standards for commercial security features like these. Fences, screens, that sort of thing. As y'all are aware, we have a little bit of context for this, a little bit before I came here. There were some issues with the downtown commercial district with security incidents, damage to property, that sort of thing. Commercial storefronts, and then in response to that, some property owners were wanting to increase their physical security presence, and we have at that point general guidelines, but nothing really specific, and so we've been working on more specific evidence for that. And there were several cases, and each one of those, there was a lot of variation in the approach that they used as in what they physically selected as their security features, as you may recall. And then, some gates have been installed downtown. This is examples of some gates that we have downtown already. And then as part of the early process of this, we began gathering information. A lot of that was with other communities that have similar historic resources, commercial historic districts. And are also served by local governments. We reached out to the Oregon State CLG listserv, got responses back from Portland and Minneapolis specifically. We also reached out broader in the National Alliance Preservation Commission listserv. And then we also looked at other design guidelines from communities that have issues, that sort of thing, to look at what their approaches are and kind of get a baseline of what's best practices. And then in the community, we also looked at, reached out to stakeholders. The Can-Do Neighborhood Association, John Livingston, he provided some feedback on our draft language for the code change. It was specifically, we had some language that said things should not adversely affect, and he wanted more specific language, so we made that change in the draft. And then the Downtown Advisory Board, their major concern that I gathered was that they didn't want every single opening, storefronts and alcoves and everything, because they were concerned there'd be a cumulative effect of looking unsafe because there were so many safety features. Make the general public feel that, well, why do we need so many safety features here? Is this an unsafe place? And so that was their major caution. We reached out to the Salem Main Street Association, and we have meetings scheduled to discuss with them in the future, but we were able to get in touch with them. And then Commissioner Morris provided some specific information based on his expertise as an architect on some specifications on how we can quantify, what side of steering, what's not side of steering, and provide something that would be useful to the property owners. And we provided some examples of some of the things that we see in other communities. This is an example. If you look above, you can see with all of the security shutters open, they're almost invisible. And then if you look at the bottom, you have an entire streetscape. There's a significant impact. This is the type of thing that the Downtown Advisory Board was cautioning against. They would hope that we limit mostly to alcoves and recessed entrances. And then we have other examples. There's a lot of variation of what's available in the market. You see like this is a rolling shutter with a combination of a solid portion and a see-through portion. And then we have also, kind of accordion style or what they call scissor style. And some of those can be minimally visible, but you can see here, if you look on the left, you can still see part of that. There's no way that they use to hide that. I will be ruining that application. And some of the ones that are made, but that's also an example of the type of thing we would see that someone may want to install in the downtown. And then, so based on all of that information, what we've gathered, we have developed a draft of standards for the we developed standards for both contributing and non-contributing buildings in the commercial historic district. And we have up here in your packet, we'll have the draft language. We've added an item for new security fencing. The materials must, one, be compatible with the character of the building's period and style in the surrounding historic district. And to be metal or another traditional material available during the period of significance for the historic district. And then in the design category, we had a D, new security fencing gates must incorporate design characteristics which minimize the overall visual impact of the security feature on the character defining feature of the historic storefront. Security fencing gates must, one, be fully retractable, movable, and two, not inhibit access to storefront alcoves during normal business operating hours. Three, not be site obscuring. And four, be attached to the historic storefront without obscuring or otherwise unreasonably detracting from the character defining features of the resource. And five, be compatible with the building's period and style and the surrounding historic district. Six, not be used to cover storefront display windows that are not components of recessed alcove entry. And seven, have an open area of 70% grade. And then we also added a definition that's in your packet, what exactly open area. So that's awesome. And then we have similarly for non-contributing buildings in commercial historic district. The main difference between these is when we're discussing the impact on the building itself, it may or may not have character defining features. So we talk more about the surrounding historic district, but otherwise they're very similar. And then, you know, we have a few things we'd like for you to do for us. The first is to look at our proposed security gate review criteria, and either if you like what you've seen there, to direct us to initiate a code amendment process to codify that. Or if you see things that you feel to improve it, we're happy to do that. So you can direct us to make recommended changes and then return you with a draft to make sure that we capture what you would like to see. Then also in your packet, you will see some educational material drafts that we've developed. And for those, if you like if you like them as they are, you can direct us to distribute them to the public to start to use them as informational materials. Or if you see changes that you feel will benefit, we're happy to make changes. And so just ask us to direct us to make the changes, and then we will do our best to get those to you the next time we meet. That concludes our update, and I'm happy to answer the questions you may have.
Great, thank you. Are there questions from the commissioners? Commissioner Weathers?
Perhaps it's implied, but I just want to clarify. So when we're talking storefronts, are we just talking the exterior of that part of the structure? And my point being is, if someone were to say, well, I installed this on the inside of the window, does it still fall into these restrictions? That's all.
Typically, we would consider that attached to the storefront assembly. So you have, you know, the bulkhead, the framing assembly, that sort of thing. So if they were attaching it to the inside, we still consider that part of the storefront attached to the storefront. I guess technically, if it was back far enough, so they made a display, and behind that they had a security gate that was minimally visible, potentially you could interpret that to mean that, you know, that wouldn't be attached to the storefront. But something that's there right in the glass where you readily see it, we would consider that attached to the storefront.
Gotcha. Yeah, I would too. I just wonder if the word front, again, I'm getting in the weeds and looking for like a loophole, but if I were looking for a loophole, I would say, well, it's not on the front, it's on the inside. Didn't know if there should be some slight clarification.
Can I jump in?
Yeah.
So what the Landmarks Commission has regulatory authority over the exterior, not the interior. That said, and I'm going to turn to Lisa in front here to jump in on the CB zone and the how there's that other criteria, which I don't remember off the top of my head, relating to ensuring that in the CB district you have to I'm guessing the percentage, 65% of the window, I'll let you do it better, please. Is not obscured, so that is what the applicable criteria would be in this case. It wouldn't be under us, it would be under the CB zone for that piece.
We have visibility standards in the CB zone, so the windows, 65% of your building, which is 65% of the facade. That's one of the numbers to have windows. And then there's a transparency standard, so you can't put like film on it, you can't black out the windows. The ones that you've seen from downtown that have some right now are open compliance cases, so we're working to remove those. Nothing prohibits you from putting curtains on the inside of your windows. It's kind of a gray area right now in the zoning if they put bars on the inside and you can still see through if it's allowed or not. We had that question recently at Friday, so we're working through that. It is our proposal, especially after talking to downtown advisory boards who have the same standards that are adopted be outside the historic district as well, just the entire downtown. Because downtown is half of the downtown zone. So we would mimic these when outside of the historic district as well. So potentially we would change the code to say not on the inside. So debate.
Commissioner Haber.
Thanks, so just following up on your comments and your comments. So then HLC would not have jurisdiction if they put a security gate on the inside. That would fall to planning. So we don't need to consider that within the criteria.
Not necessarily, but if you have strong thoughts about it, we're happy
Sure.
to hear it.
Yeah. No, my first thought went to curtains, actually. It's like, well, curtains, metal. Yes, you can get creative, but I don't know. So looking at the proposed code language and wondering, playing devil's advocate, because time marches on. And 50 years ago was 1972. And I don't know when vinyl was introduced, but I'm guessing it was fairly close to 72. To the horror of everybody I know, but we want to make our code as future-proof as we can. So I'm wondering if we want to get specific things like metal and that sort of thing. I think we could probably strike that and just say it's the traditional material available during the period. I think that covers it fairly well. Because we are going to have historic buildings that were built in like 8 years in 1980 that look really different than the buildings built in 1880. So that's just a comment there. And then the site obscurity criteria. So looking under the section 2D, and then there's 7 sub criteria there. So I'm wondering with the site obscuring, what the thought is around, I understand like why we don't want full site obscuring. What is staff's thought around it being not at all? Is that because it's meeting some other type of criteria within code, or what is that hinged on, I guess? Because I can see like a use case where you might have, I think you had a photo of it, you might have some of it that's site obscuring up to 25–30% of it, because that might be the area that somebody's gonna come on and like kick it or something. And you might want to have fence that's going to be a bit stronger, you know, structurally. You might want that. I don't know, just thinking out loud. But is that important enough that we want to say no site obscuring? And I know there's a criteria further down about having an open area of 70%. But do we want to? I guess are those two things in conflict? Those two criteria in conflict.
So not site obscuring, and I'm giving, you asked for staff's opinion, I'm giving my opinion.
Yeah.
And having been deep in the weeds, both in implementing the code that we already have and dealing with specific cases, and the language we have in our code, we pretty consistently use throughout our code, and I'm gonna say in the standards, again, so in the standards, so we have the standards and the guidelines have a lot more flexibility. And if I could speak a little bit to, what we really didn't talk about yet, but we will, and that's the process. So the intention of these standards is to be for use as a class 2 process, so that would be administrative for staff. And so we need as much specificity, as possible. But in the event that you have a situation or a scenario where you've got, I always, where you've got a developer or a property owner downtown who's like, I can't do it, then they can come to the Landmarks Commission and get more flexibility. So, I am very comfortable with with that language just because I've used it before. And I have a good sense of what it means, and I really like, the addition of the number 7 and, with the quantification, 70% or greater, and then having a definition of what open area means. That makes it so much easier, on staff's end, because then we can be like, check, you know? So that's my opinion, kind of other staff, other opinions, that's.
Yeah, thanks. It does make sense. Was also thinking, so you showed a photo from somewhere of like historic security fencing, which I would think at some point we're gonna have to consider, because that will come along. And I don't know for sure, but I'm assuming that there's, especially 30 buildings, there's gonna be some of that built in, the building ready, that we'll have to consider. That I don't know if this addresses that, but that one photo I was thinking of was, it looked old to me, or historic, kind of Fortean style security gate, which I think have been around for a long time. So would we consider that as a exception to this? We need to add anything about that if it's historically been there for within the greatest significance that can be retained. So I don't know, I'll throw it out there for my colleagues.
Well, I think the one that you're talking about, that accordion style, I think as long as they can conceal it when it's open, would meet everything we're talking about here. So I think, as Kimberly was saying, I think there's a lot of flexibility built into this. The one that was shown with the kind of the opaque. Yeah, the bottom. Yeah, that's more of a bodily fluid guard, not a strength guard. So
Yeah.
They're very strong, you know. Typically, you're not gonna get through any certain part, but there are definitely certain things that they prefer not to have in there.
Well, it brings, sorry,
Commissioner Kaiser, go ahead.
it brings up a good point, because, you know, we want our buildings to be used downtown. We don't want to make it so prohibitive that property owners go, I'm done. Move in out to Lancaster, because there's not this regulation. So I think it's a fair point, and that, you know, thanks for bringing that up, because, you know, I'm thinking about somebody kicking it, not, you know, doing other things to it. But that's something that property owner, you know, warns gonna have to kind of deal with. That's the reality of the world. So I think it's a fair point to consider, do we want to be restrictive in a 0 site obscurity criteria? Or do we want to get to a specific something else that maybe does allow?
A point of clarification on that question, if someone perchance did want to do something that was partially site obscuring, they could potentially bring that to HLC, right? So that we would have a kind of chance to consider that.
Correct.
Okay, perfect. So maybe that's a good amount of flexibility, is that if it isn't all the way site obscuring, then they could bring it for us and we could decide whether it fits or not.
And as a follow-up, again, from my perspective as staff, I mean, I feel like our code our chapter 230 has a lot of discretion built into its standards already. And yet, like, something like that, I think it steps over a line for me in terms of discretion. It's like, what's okay, how tall, like what's, and then material. So that would be, I think, very appropriate to be at Landmarks.
Commissioner Herman.
Going back to the historic security gates, I think you bringing up that, you know, if there's exceptions or unique situations or cases, they can be brought to the commission to be discussed, and I think that kind of takes care of the thought I had where, if there are, contributing or non-contributing historic buildings who want to install a historic security gate, that maybe they have a photo that used to be there, and they wanna kind of tie in the historic element of the building with the security, and this is part, you know, this belongs with the building, and it may not cover our code, but I think that's the route that they would need to take, that is bring it to the commission. So I just wanted to put that out there in case someone else had that in their head too.
More comments? Questions?
I would like to add one point about security gates in terms of some of the, you know, the overall philosophy. Yeah, it's what you would see with Secretary of the Interior standards. And since the alcoves were typically open, that is one of the kind of the philosophical, you know, underpinnings. So we would say, okay, this is the option that doesn't what we want, but it is also a way to keep that sense of openness. So we're weighing those two things and trying to find a balance.
Perfect. Thank you for that extra information. I wanted to go back, if anybody else, you know, I have a couple of comments. I wanted to talk about Commissioner Kaiser's comments about the vinyl. And I think that we might be covered by the language in the standards, because it does say that it has to be a traditional material available during the period of significance for the district, which I think is to 1950, if I'm remembering correctly. So we wouldn't necessarily have to consider something that would be available later. So it would be within a period of significance for the district. So maybe we're okay.
Would this just apply though to this downtown historic district, or could it be any future hit commercial historic districts?
I suppose it could be.
I mean, if there
yeah.
was, yeah.
Yes. Yeah. I haven't thought about like a new conventional historic district. Okay, great. So I guess that's maybe a comment for this historic district. Oh, good thing. So maybe that's good for this historic district, and then we can cross that bridge when we start nominating 1970s and 80s.
Strip malls.
I had a question about one of the photos and the language in the standards for the specific storefront. I'm talking about number 6, not be used to cover storefront display windows that are not components of a recessed alcove or entry. And I just noticed that you had shown a picture of like a doorway that was specifically covered. Are we looking to, yeah, this one, are we looking to allow this kind of thing? Because it sounds like the language wouldn't necessarily allow that.
In this case, I feel it would probably be interpreted because it is the entry itself and not even the storefront windows, and also it's a recessed corner. So for that one, I think it'd be pretty comfortable. Or I think staff would likely, unless Kimberly disagrees, I would interpret that as part of a recessed alcove.
Okay, great. I just wanted to clarify on that. And then I have one more question. Is there anybody else who'd like to make some comments? I have one question about the process going forward. So you say that you still have a meeting set up with the Downtown Association. Do you expect that there's going to be a lot of comments about the standards from that meeting, or have you? I just don't know what the communication has been.
So far, we haven't had any substantial communication. So I expect if it goes like our other outreach, there will be some comments, I'm sure, but I don't know to what extent, you know.
Kimberly?
If I might jump in, so it's the Main Street Association, so these folks are very active in interpretation and at least the people that we've been engaging with, and they're not necessarily business owners, right? So they have a different perspective. But like Jake said, I'm not sure yet. It's been Jackie Hubie and Hazel Patton. Of course, so she did buildings downtown, but doesn't anymore. So I'm sure she'll have some thoughts,
Okay, great.
but yeah, I'm not sure.
Okay, great. I guess I just wouldn't want to move forward with the code amendment and if we got a bunch of comments from the other group that we want to incorporate, so I'm kind of thinking about process moving forward. I'm kind of thinking that maybe you have this meeting or incorporate any big changes that come in so we can discuss them and then we can maybe move the language forward to the code amendment at the next meeting if there are any changes. I don't know if anybody has a different opinion.
I don't know if we've settled on the process for doing the code amendment because we're proposing to also have the language appear outside the historic district. And we have a big code amendment package that we're working on for housing related items, and that needs to go through planning commission, that needs to go through HLC. So we're pondering a joint public hearing or two separate public hearings that then get combined into an ordinance. And we're still trying to figure that out. So at some point we will be asking for you to initiate the code amendments. We just haven't quite figured it all out yet.
Okay, so we've got
There's
some
one
time to
moving
get
parts.
these like together. Okay, great.
Although we are moving fast, so like we want to April or so.
Okay, great. But we'll stay tuned for more information. Okay, perfect. Commissioner Weathers.
Yeah, sorry, I should have said earlier, but when you reread for the third time, part 6, it made me think that any of the windows that I've seen broken downtown that would benefit from something like this aren't the recessed entry or the alcoves, it's just a plate glass window. Is there any separate provision? I know that there's things just in the general code talks about securing those windows and not, but anticipating what Main Street might say from a business owner perspective, they go, yeah, my windows are broken at the time, but it's not the store door, it's not the little alcove. So to say that I can't be part of it is interesting.
Kimberly?
So I can just jump in and say that, for the last, since 2020, I suppose, I've been working with property owners downtown to try to get solutions to helping improve security, especially around windows that don't obscure them. So for example, the facilities manager at Pioneer Trust Bank, who uses quite a few properties downtown, he's been using, it's a window film that's clear, it's transparent, but it is very, very strong. I think Lisa might have another example. And also this film was used at Depot because it meets the Secretary of the Interior standards. So, because you can't see it and it's removable. So we are trying to be very respectful of the challenges that historic property owners are dealing with, but also still try to preserve that. But we've had some.
I was just gonna say that was the main topic when we were downtown advisory board, which I know I'm on and you missed the meeting. And unanimously, they said they didn't want the windows to be eligible because of the feeling unsafeness that it would give to people that are downtown. But they did talk a lot about windows being broken, and the urban development division staff's opinion, Sherry walks the downtown every single morning, cleans up things and knows everything. Said that the majority of the windows that are broken, especially repeatedly, are vacant buildings or where they're not being actively used. And so the city's trying to spend more time and energy and effort and money to, activate those spaces. I mean, you own downtown buildings, so maybe a different perspective. But that was part of the conversation that was very much unanimous at that meeting from that group that we should not allow them on the windows more. That there are other solutions.
What I would just add then, you mentioned using the secretary briefs and whatnot, at times they suggest a application that does work. So perhaps in this handout that's going out, mentioning even that exact film, so that again, an uninformed person that looks at it and says, "Oh, why can't I protect my window?" They go, "Well, she can. We're a great option." And the questions are answered for us.
Yeah.
Just
Commissioner
a
Warren.
quick sidebar to Kimberly, is that something that could be part of the toolbox grants? Filming windows downtown?
That's a
that's a question for urban development, because they have way more money than we do. Yes, I know that they have grants that they are already giving out, distributing to help improve security. And now that we're one department, then we can work more closely with them to try and address some of these concerns in a way that still meets our criteria.
Yeah, I think at the meeting, they said they haven't funded any gates on the front so far. They've been doing lighting and then gates like on the alley around, back entrances, garbage areas, that kind of stuff, but they're open to expanding what could be funded through those grants.
Is that something that we could maybe ask them to consider? Commissioner Inman,
I have a question,
is your microphone?
yeah, that's fine. The preservation brief that's referenced in the guidelines, preservation brief number 11, does that have the film recommendation in it?
I don't know. We can.
I would just suggest either adding that additional brief or that information to the guidelines so that people can look it up instead of putting it into the
So, are you giving direction to put it in the code?
no, into the
Oh, yeah.
guidelines. Give
Yeah.
any additional reference to the preservation briefs in the
Yeah.
guidelines.
Yes.
Okay, great. I think that might be a nice segue from sort of the language itself to the educational materials. Do we have any comments about the educational materials that are part of the packet? I might have one clarifying question just to get us started. So I see there's like a couple of different pages that kind of have different formatting. Is this kind of like two different alternatives, or are they all considered to be one alternative?
We have those two. One is based on a series that was done previously. One that was a little longer with more text, spoken about security. So it's formatted to complement those. It has a little more context, a little less. This is a good example. This is a not useful example. Then the other one is more designed to be used for, property owners thinking about what might be an appropriate store. And so we have both of those. One was just to kind of continue what we had before, and then the other one is new material.
Right, yeah, I just want to comment that I think the photos are really useful, so having examples for folks to look at, I think is always really nice, and I would encourage the use of those and more. Commissioner Hardeman.
And is it safe to assume that this, the guide portion, it's, built more to be seen on a computer screen rather than a printout? Like how some of the imagery.
Yes. So, Jake is gonna laugh because I wanna print everything out. But no, it should be on a computer and then be adapted for a phone as well. You can do a lot more on a computer.
Yeah, thank you. You can zoom on it 100%.
She wants to print everything but save money by doing it black and white. So
Yeah,
probably but also can't see it.
Oh, no, absolutely.
So don't do what why did she print these black?
Well, it was more about, if we were proposing to have this out as like a booklet or a flyer to give the property owners who want to.
No, it's not realistic or cost effective.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Hazer.
I would suggest that we just have one. So that we don't have to update two things, the same information, update two different pieces of material.
And and this is, I guess, the exact question, could we do a draft webpage?
That's what I was thinking too.
Can we do that and then share that next time? That way you could see what it's would look like in the live world. Do you think that would be possible, Zach?
It would be possible.
Okay.
It may not be pretty, but it would.
That's why we call it a draft.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Any other questions from any of the commissioners? I think our conversation is kind of winding down here. So, I think to summarize, I'll try to summarize and then people can tell me if I've done a bad job. On the first recommendation for staff, about the proposed security gate criteria, we'd like to maybe, revisit them again at a future meeting. Having considered the comments that we get from the other downtown group and maybe the timing and considerations for this new code package, and then we'll take a look at the language more formally at a meeting in the future. But we don't have any big concerns about any of the language, is kind of what I'm understanding from the commissioners tonight. Okay, great. And then summarizing on item 2, we might have just one educational material and it might be web form, including links to maybe an example of the film and also the preservation brief is going to be a part of that as well. Does that sound like a pretty good summary? Does anybody have any questions or comments about that? Commissioner Brendan?
It sounded like though, if we were to direct staff to initiate the code amendment process, as is, that we would still have time to consider the comments from the public and still have time to direct staff for changes during the process.
Would staff prefer us to formally do it tonight or?
I think we have to bring a resolution forward for you to adopt the resolution, which we haven't written yet, so.
I think we can bring things back next in March, and I don't know, Lisa, you tell me, I think that we have enough time as long as we can bring a resolution to you in April, it should, okay, we'll have made some decisions.
Or even March, we don't, so, just remember, we don't need to have the final language decided when the resolution is more like, whereas we wanted them to address security gates, whereas we wanted to schedule a hearing on this item, so it's more. Okay, so we can probably bring it to March.
Okay, great. I think that summarizes our discussion. Does staff have any more questions, need any additional direction from us before we move on? Okay, great. Then I think this agenda item is done. Okay, next up is going to be work plan assignment updates. And thank you to staff for all your work on that. I appreciate you guys meeting with so many folks. I know it's probably a lot of meetings, so thank you.
Well,
Oh, don't,
Anyway, first one. So this is what y'all got assigned to last time. This is our plan. Thank you. Thanks, thank you. Right, and for those of you that weren't even hearing about assigned, like Commissioner Weathers and also Commissioner Zimmerman, welcome, yay. This is your opportunity to talk about it, right? We did adopt the annual report for 2023, but this is honestly your opportunity to just confirm these are the committees you really want to be on, for us to talk in more detail about what they are, what the work is involving, to ask us questions if you need to. So I'm going to turn it back over to the chair and you guys can talk through what the assignments look like. And if you're like, Commissioner, and you're looking at your name, and you're like, no. Or wait, I want to volunteer for 3. Great. I'll turn it over to you.
as a quick note, I can provide some clarification because some commissioners, they're listed as just like part of number 1, but they're specifically only want to do the speakers bureau or specifically only want to do a portion of that category.
Commissioner Burton?
Is that why Strong is listed in number 1 twice?
We want her to do extra things.
Yeah, she's in there for the the homeowners, what's that called, forum, and then also the photo.
Okay, great. I propose maybe we could go down, 1 through 6, just talk kind of briefly about, the projects that we have planned, and then if anybody, would like to either sign up or if you change your mind, will we allow that? Probably. And then we can just go through and make sure everybody's happy with their, work plan, assignments. So the first one's gonna be the general education sport celebrations. So we've got the Speakers Bureau, Conservation Month, pretty prizes, and then hopefully a historic property owner forum. And we've got Commissioner Weathers, Strong, Kaiser, Morris, Zimmerman, and Kernan, and then Strong is doing a couple of different specific things. So, everybody happy with that? Okay, cool. Speaking of social media, we can never lose you, Commissioner. You're our social media beaver over here. So that's going to be regular maintenance of the HLC's social media, and we want you to work here and there as well. Do you feel like you need any additional support or help?
It seems like things are running pretty well. I think as we have additional material that comes up to the commission, I mean, we can always utilize that as stuff we put out there as well. So it seems like things are moving on pretty.
Okay, great. Perfect. Well, then I think that sounds great. So we'll move on down to the next one, which is the liaison to the Cultural Heritage and Forum. And that's going to be a support development of the Cultural Heritage Disaster Plan, which that sounds really interesting. And it's going to be Commissioner Inman and Commissioner McGlinty Timbrook. Are we happy with that? Do you guys feel like you've got enough support and knowledge for that? Commissioner Inman?
We actually had a meeting with the group of graduate students who are doing some disaster planning, and it was kind of interesting because they they're learning about how commissions and governments and institutions deal with disasters, and they don't have much experience with disasters, so it was a
Juliana has a lot of experience with disasters, and so she has a lot of questions. What about this and or wait, what about that? And you're like, oh, she's like, I have experienced this. She's a plethora of knowledge when it comes to
Excellent.
disaster.
So anyway, there will be additional meetings with that facilitated by this group, and it's interesting.
Perfect. This is just a random question, but is the pandemic like part of disaster planning? Like if people can't come visit your somewhere, just kind of like wondering about that.
I don't think we talked about, I mean.
In our debrief, we actually talked about next time, and also part of individual interviews is how do you define disaster? Because I know if I was asked that question in 2019, I would definitely have answered it differently than I would today.
Just curious. Yeah.
And an example might be a preservation organization who has fire sprinklers that go off and flood their storage room. You know, for them it's a disaster, but it's not a widespread disaster. So, disasters can be fires and floods and building failures.
Yeah. Well, interesting. I'll be curious to see how that goes, and maybe you could, if you get to a good point, you could bring a report to the commission and we can compare what you guys have learned. I think that would be great. Perfect. Well, then we'll go ahead and move on to the next one, which is the liaison to the SCAN Heritage Neighborhood Subcommittee. So coordinating with SCAN for their new Heritage Neighborhood designation, and that's going to be me, Commissioner McGlinty Timbrook, and Commissioner Kaiser. I haven't heard anything about this yet. I don't know if we've started meeting with, Kimberly.
We had a meeting once.
No, it was our kickoff meeting with the SCAN Neighborhood Association, and just Jake and I went and just gave an overview of what is a heritage neighborhood, and it went really well. nothing, no big questions. I think I must have said this is not regulatory like 7 times. Yeah, so everyone was reassured and so the next steps for that are we've left it in the neighborhood's hands. They are gonna get back to us about what their priority is for the first project that they want to work on. And then Zach will outreach with the doodle poll, or whatever, to find a good time for us to get together.
Great, excellent. I am excited for this project. I think it's gonna be fun. And we will probably have everybody come help when we do an actual survey, hopefully if you can, so that'll be fun. Okay, great. Next up is the archaeology roundtable. Commissioner Crittenden, star of the show here.
Yeah, I've been attending the roundtables with the different tribes that attend, and yeah, I'd say it's a fantastic venue or resource to talk to the tribes about specific projects within Salem, and kind of get in the weeds a little bit. There's definitely some projects that are more elevated and needing more than just a 15-minute overview. But it's a great way to kind of, test the waters or get a heat map in place on how tribes feel about some of the projects that are happening in Salem, which is fantastic to get those that feedback early so that planners and funding sources can be looked into a little closer. So yeah, I just show up and I smile on camera and but no, it's been really great. I myself personally in my profession, I've gotten a lot out of it too. So it's actually helped me quite a bit. Yeah, so keeping those going. I can definitely say that these monthly tribal roundtables, the tribes like them so much that they are starting to ask other agencies to also host them. And I know that because I was asked to host some in my own job. So what I'm saying is, again, Salem is a trailblazer, setting the way on how things should be done. So yeah, kudos. I'm not taking kudos on myself. Kudos to staff for setting those up and keeping them going and professional and recorded, and yeah, it definitely is a next level thing that is getting recognized that Salem's doing it right.
Well, great. Thank you for all of your work on the liaison too. That's great. Perfect. Okay, so the last one is the Boarding Historic designation. That's Commissioner Weathers, Keeler, Strauss, and Inman. We are currently working. I'm currently going to finish soon the school nomination that we've been working on for a while. And then we also have hopefully the Englewood Park kind of coming up sometime soon.
We have, how many? Like 5 right now.
Really?
Like, we just got a new request yesterday for a new pool house. So we have, what was called the Star House. I don't know what I'm calling. I'm giving them all.
Right, there is
Jerry Frank.
the Jerry Frank House.
Oh,
That is one.
exciting.
Mhm. And then,
Yeah, we wanted to work.
right, and then,
Receipts upon.
yeah, and that's one we haven't set up the tree, so if you're interested, including this could be, as long as it's not a quarrel number would be. And then, it's called the Star House, and I haven't seen it yet.
It looks like a star. It looks like a star.
Yeah, it's,
Plan.
I know it's gonna be distinctive, I don't know, the story behind it yet, but it's, yeah, it's a distinctive plan at least.
I'm very curious. Well, cool.
Where is it?
It's a little farther south, it's kind of
It's in
south of the town.
It's, I think it was constructed in 1856.
Huh.
Yeah. I just want to point out that Commissioner Morris, you're gonna sign up and raise your hand for this one.
Oh,
Yeah.
if you want to set up a Jerry Frank tour, is that
Yes, well, that's next. We have limited capacity, so I told Jake that he should reach out and
Yeah, we'll do it to the AI.
see.
Everybody's gonna want to see that.
I love it.
Well, maybe you can take my place, because I think I'm not to pull myself off this. Just because of work and I don't know if I can do all three.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, unless you want me to pull off all one of the other ones. So,
Maybe your role could just be slightly different because of all
Maybe
your
she's-
experience.
that's fine, I could be like a consultant.
You
That's fine,
could, you could just review, like, I don't know, we'll talk.
yeah,
Yeah, it's always helpful to have seconds advice on that stuff.
I can read, I can edit.
I can, okay, great. Okay, great, so you're gonna stay on. And then we're gonna add Commissioner Morris as well. Thank you, that's very exciting. Okay, great.
I had one more because we were joking about it last time and it's not really, I think it's, I don't know what it is, Zach, it was something that we were gonna ask Chris to do for the newsletter on a regular basis. I think he was hoping we would forget.
No, the photos.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, that's part of my update.
Newsletter's next.
I'm not.
I'm on the agenda. Okay, great, cool. Last chance to say I'm sad, then we're gonna move on. Okay, great, now we're done. So we are moving on to the next agenda item, unless staff has anything else on the work plans. Okay, great. It's newsletter.
I don't have a presentation, but last month we discussed the spring edition would be about nomination and designation of local libraries. So Christian, you more or less volunteered to do a how to nominate article. And everything else is currently open, and I was going to recommend that we get someone to volunteer to write an article about Jerry Frankson's. One about the Criterion Schoolhouse and then one about. So they don't necessarily have to be about the nomination process for those, but it might be good to just write an article about with those as the subject. So whatever leeway you want to take with that is fine. You're also it's your newsletter, so you can just completely ignore that idea, but I thought that would be a good thing to close. And I'm prepared to write down names of who wants to do that.
When's the due date?
This would be the week of the 21st
Of this month,
of March.
of March.
So
Okay,
that's-
so we've got some time. I would be a little bit hesitant just on the, I could probably get the Criterion School one done. I think I would be fine with doing that. The other two, I just don't know if we have enough time. Because if we haven't started the research yet, it wouldn't be enough to write an article about. So, I don't know if I have any other ideas. Are there any other cool schools we could write about?
Potentially, no. I'm not familiar.
Education, the theme could be education.
I wasn't necessarily thinking that the article could be that in-depth or leading us to the nomination, but it could just be an article about Jerry Frank and not necessarily his house. It's just something that is related to all these things that we would like to know this year.
Yeah, Commissioner Smith.
Yeah, I'd be happy to write something about the Jerry Frank house. I think if we wrote something about Jerry Frank, we might need a couple of issues of the newsletter or something like that, just as he's done so much civically in addition to his professional part. But I could probably write something about the house.
Okay, great, perfect. Does anyone want to write about the Englewood Park? You taking your mask off?
Yeah, I will volunteer to do something about that and focus on the Lord and Scriber connection and maybe do a print or reprint of the original plan.
Yeah.
Because that's so cool and people just don't know about it. So it'd be good for educating the public about what was, the historical design.
Okay, perfect. I think that sounds great. Does that sound good to you, Zachary?
And then the only other thing is getting our history of the street photo, and I will recommend that it's something that's listed. But the stay on theme.
Yeah.
That's all I have, so.
Okay, great. So we will go ahead and get that stuff to you by the 21st of March, the week of the 21st of March. Okay. Okay, great. I think that brings us then down to the historic preservation and cost report.
Great, so Sam, give it to you quick. So tomorrow, I'm with Charles, we're giving a tours for the State Advisory Committee on Historic Preservation. Do you want to talk about your part? But yeah,
I will be giving a tour with Kimberly. No, Joy reached out and wanted to bring some folks by, I don't know. From what she said, to the work that's going on at with Fort Willowbox, the Darcy and Myers buildings there. The Great Bell, the Fort Footy.
and I just want to give a shout out. The reason is because you've been doing such great work in Salem with going through the tax credit process, which isn't always easy, right? And meeting the Secretary of the Interior Standards and doing, you now know what part 1, part 2, part 3 mean. Yeah. And then we're gonna go over to the Heritage Center and show them some of the work we've been doing on Kara will appreciate this. I'm doing an MPD. Yeah, I am. Oregon Country Methodist Mission sites. Yeah, so the MPDs for not just ones in Salem, but we're doing an individual National Register nomination for the Jason Lee House site. And so we're giving them a tour. And are you gonna say that? You did a tour of the Jason Lee House. And for fundies, I brought some artifacts from the Jason Lee site, if you want to look at some of the strengths. Yeah. The only other thing, I want to give a shout out to Andy, because so one of the things, I'm not sure if you were aware that I've been doing, I don't know how long, starting in COVID, I guess, is writing an article once a month for the Salem Reporter. And people who read it love all things history, and so it's expanded. So now I'm also writing an article about archaeology stuff and things, and it's just too much. So Andy has agreed to take what did you agree? One every other month, maybe. Yeah, see, I'm all like, how do you know? So, as many of you know, he used to write for the season. So, but I really appreciate the way that you write, and you have such a good insight into what you're talking about. And the first one you did, if memory serves, it was around Christmas time. And it was about, tell them what it was about. It was really cool.
Oh, yeah, this was about the religious display that they had at the
Crash.
Capitol
Is
Mall.
that what's called a crash, like the crash? Is that what it's called? Yeah.
And
Like,
yeah, the photos that the Ben Maxwell collection consisted of, the cut lines, well, it was a couple of years later that they removed it from the courthouse grounds. It was all this legal stuff, and the more I dug, it was just like another layer. It was just like, well, it was still here in 65 and 66, so I kept trying to chase it down, and it stayed like on the Capitol grounds like 1980 or something. But yeah, everybody just thought, oh, it's only there a couple of years, but it was like almost 20 years. So it was kind of interesting to see how things kind of shook out and what happened in that display. But I think the plan is just to kind of continue to identify the photos within the Ben Maxwell collection that have kind of ambiguous kind of details and things in there, and then just kind of try to clean it up a little bit or clarify some of the information, or completely dispute what was written, and then just kind of provide the accurate account of whatever the photo display is. But yeah, that first one was just kind of like,
wow, this thing really is going on, you know, so it was a lot of research, because every year it's like, okay, was this display up, did it disappear? And yeah, I imagine there'll probably be a few more of those as we go through and try to track things down.
Yeah, this is, how many photos are there, Zach? In the Ben Maxwell collection, one of our goals, which we started years ago, right, with an intern, and we've had several subsequent interns, and we've been, it's fact checking essentially, because volunteers put together the captions, was it in the 90s?
Yeah, it was in the 90s. It was one of the first digitization photos for
Yeah.
projects, which is actually kind of interesting.
It is cool, but yeah, so we're taking the slow and sure approach and doing articles like this. It's a really fun way, I think, to engage the public about Salem's history, but also get the fact check. You said it very graciously. You're like, yeah. Anyway,
That's all I have. Okay, great. Any other comments from any commissioners? Commissioner Huber?
Just comment about that, that could be an interesting project, because my old house is in one of those photos. And I remember thinking the caption's not right, but the date was off by.
well, you should tell.
Interesting. But that'd be kind of a fun public crowdsourced, like.
We have so many, so yeah,
I know.
any ideas you have to do this efficient. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Great. Well, with that, I think we are ready to adjourn. So we will adjourn the February 15th, 2024 meeting of the Salem Historic District.